Hey Foot Geeks fans, it's CJ here, and today we want to talk about stretchable shoes. Now, what are the benefits of a stretchable shoe? Well, if you have hammer toes, maybe bunions, or you have a tendency to swell throughout the day, the stretchy material will allow the foot to be accommodated a lot better inside the shoe than it would be in a maybe a leather shoe or a harder type material, right? Because a harder material will not give, so it won't really allow for expansion. So the beauty of a stretchable shoe is that this particular material will give as the foot swells, for example. So as the foot swells, the material itself will stretch out a little bit, and it will allow it to kind of reduce some of the pressure on the foot, and therefore the swelling is going to have room to kind of expand, right? Or if you have a hammer toe, for example, that kind of sticks up in here, we'll have the ability to kind of push into the material a little bit without there being a significant pressure point on that particular hammer toe. Same goes for a bunion. So if you have like a bunion or a hallux valgus condition where the toe goes sideways and you get a little bone that kind of sticks out on the side right here, this particular material will allow this to also stretch out a little bit to reduce some of the pressure. Now, what are the other benefits of a stretchable shoe? Another benefit of stretchable shoes, especially in the fedoras, is that some of these materials that we use are actually heat moldable. So for example, this shoe does not only stretch, but it also has the ability to be heat molded to the shape of your foot. And therefore, if you have a hammer toe, for example, that is very, very sensitive to pressure, this particular material can be heated up and bumped out significantly to reduce pressure on that particular area of your foot. Other materials like these guys here, will be stretchable. That's kind of a fabric nylon combination, and that's very flexible as well. So it will kind of move a little bit easier. Feels more like a sock on the foot than it does a shoe, just because of the material kind of having that quality of a sock that kind of expands and contracts as you move with it. And that's obviously a beautiful thing if you have very, very sensitive feet. Other materials in the stretchable shoes will have more of a leather backing to them. So they use a thin piece of leather with a nylon kind of lining underneath to make this material slightly stretchable, but not as stretchable. Now, if you want to have something that's kind of softer inside and maybe a little bit more gentle on the foot, and you want to have the ability to maybe stretch it out a little bit as well, because this material, obviously the leather will stretch over time, but it also allows us as podorthists to then go in and stretch the material for you to create a little bit more give in certain areas where there may need to be a little bit more room potentially for the foot. Now that's a great material to be using as well for somebody that maybe has sensitive feet and doesn't want something to rub or put too much pressure on. But you can see that if I put my finger in here compared to, let's say, this shoe, which is super flexible, it definitely doesn't have the same level of give, and therefore we'll be a little bit firmer on the foot and we'll feel a little bit harder in general. And there's also materials like polyurethane that they use for certain stretch uppers, and that's a more flexible material, a little bit harder to work with. So if you want to, for example, stretch that out, it's not really that easy to do, because if we heat it, it sometimes separates from the nylon mesh on the inside, and that can be a problem, and that's not necessarily something that we recommend. Another downside with certain materials in the stretch family is that because certain materials like the polyurethane, for example, does not stretch very well, it may not be super suitable for somebody that has really, really sensitive skin that's really not appreciating a lot of pressure, because that may not be flexible enough for that foot to be comfortable, and in that case that foot may require an extra depth shoe, and that's basically a shoe that has more space and accommodates that foot better without any rubbing or friction on it. And those are just different types of shoes. But for somebody that has a little bit of requirement of having something a little bit gentler on the foot that doesn't put too much pressure, a stretchable shoe is a phenomenal option, and definitely would recommend that as a footwear. For somebody that maybe is not as mobile, requires a little bit of give when there's some swelling going on, or maybe has bunions and hammer toes, but maybe isn't moving around too much and needs a little bit of a gentler feel on the foot. So those are great options for that. If you have any questions, comments, post them below. Otherwise, have a phenomenal day.